Blue Porpoise here, and as promised, I am giving you guys a G3000 video to highlight some of the lesser known features that we actually have available here. The things I'm going to be showing you today you can actually use in the TBM and the longitude if you have the working title mod G3000s. Listen, guys, I didn't realize until I got this microphone that I have a problem saying G3000. You know, in my head and when I'm typing it, it flows easily, but when I'm actually having to say it into a microphone, I'm gonna stumble more times during this recording, so you'll have to forgive me. But anyway, as I was saying, you know, if you have those versions of the working title mod, the TBM and the longitude G3000, see what I tell you, those actually have more features than what we have here. You know, this is kind of an older version that was implemented here, and even though working title hasn't updated the G3000 for quite some time, even for those models, there's some pretty nice features in those aircraft too. And speaking of updates, we all know there is a big G3000 update coming from working title, and let me tell you, it is going to be amazing. If anybody is familiar with the G3000 or G5000, you know that it's like the G1000 NXI to the next level. It's just so many things that it allows the pilot to do, so many capabilities that it gives you, and I think working title spent so much time perfecting the NXI because they wanted to have everything optimized for when they brought it over to the G3000. And I think once Marwan gets his hands on it and he puts it in this jet, game over. Game over. I don't know who's going to be able to make a better total package, if you will. But that doesn't mean that just because we haven't received that yet, that we don't have some pretty cool things in the current package. So this video is going to be directed at those who, you know, are probably new to the G3000, new to the HJet. Well, we're all new to the HJet, but aren't really familiar with some of the inner workings of the G3000. It's going to be done in two segments. I'm starting here on the ground. We're in New Orleans right now. And the only reason I'm here is because, as you can see outside, it is an ugly day, and I needed it to be an ugly day because the second half of the video is going to be done in the air, and I need to have some weather so we can highlight the features that I want to show you once we're airborne. So we will get started here. Let's go ahead and put power on the aircraft. And because I know I'm going to be running my mouth, we'll go ahead and put the GPU on, because I'm positive that the batteries would die in the amount of time that it would take me to go through all of this. So as you can see, as I was saying, we have some weather off to the east of us right now. I do have a flight plan loaded in here. We're not going to be flying. I'm not doing a tutorial flight. There's plenty of really good tutorial flights out there for you guys to look at. This is just going to kind of dive into the G3000 suite a little bit deeper than some of those tutorials might go. So that is the main purpose of what I'm doing here today. Okay, so the first thing I want to discuss, I know a lot of people have been talking about the FPS hit that they get not only with this aircraft, but just pretty much any aircraft that has either the G1000 or the G3000. See what I'm talking about? You know, these glass flight decks, they are awesome in that there's a lot of things, a lot of information being given to us, but they are also very taxing on the system, because you figure all this stuff has to be drawn. You know, everything going on in all these screens has to be drawn. You know, where your older aircraft with the steam gauges, you know, it's just a needle going back and forth, back and forth. There's not as much information that has to be drawn. But when you have on one gauge weather radar, airports, terrain, navigation, you know, you have all these things being displayed, you can kind of see where it takes a hit. So there are some things that you can do to help lower that performance hit a little bit, and I'm going to show you some of those now. One of the very first things that I think you need to do if you are having some kind of issue with performance is come down here to map settings and just go through each one of these tabs here in the map setting menu and turn off anything that you're not using. I don't fly with AI, so I don't have traffic on. I do use terrain, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. The flight plan text, there's all this stuff, I think. Aviation, the only thing I use here is the airports. Now, if you want to see airways, VORs, intersections, NDBs, all that stuff, you can turn all that stuff on. I don't like seeing it. I want as little information displayed up here as possible that still gives me enough to be able to perform the flight. But anything else here is just, for me, just added stress on the system. As you can see, none of this stuff is turned on. Now, if you have the TBM or the longitude, there is actually an additional mod that comes with their G3000 mod that allows you to actually be able to put roads and cities on your display. I don't know why anybody will want to do that if you're flying a TBM or a longitude, because you're going to be flying well above that stuff. But hey, to each their own. It is going to be more things that have to be drawn up here, so I just don't use it. And we'll talk about some of these other things as we go along. But yeah, just go through here. Anything that you think you won't use, just turn it off. You know, there's no need to have it being displayed up here. Once you've done that, then you can come over here to map details, and we all know this guy. I call it the declutter arrow. I only keep mine at second from the bottom, and the only reason is because that's the minimum that you need for the navigation display and airports to be displayed. Anything else I don't need, you know. The higher you go, the more of the extra stuff I don't really care about being displayed, so I just keep it right here, one step above. I guess this would be 0 here at the bottom. So that's the MFD side of the house. But what some of you may not know is that the PFD actually has something that's pretty frame rate intense for some systems too. And that's the actual SVT, or the synthetic vision here. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, you see how you can see the apron here, the ramp that we're on? You know, and when you turn onto the runway, you'll usually see the runway, or if you're flying over mountains, you'll see mountains. That's all part of your synthetic vision. You can actually turn that off. In order to do that, we'll go to PFD settings, other setting. Oops, I lied. Back, PFD settings, and then we go to attitude overlays. And right there is your synthetic vision. If you're having some performance hits that your MFD by itself didn't really help in the HJet, or any plane I guess that you're using the G3000, and just go ahead and turn this guy off. That will help clear up a lot of issues for, you know, if you're right there on that fine line of I can fly but I'm still having some issues. Try turning it off, see if it helps. I personally like having it on, and I'm on a weaker system compared to a lot of the gaming rigs you guys are operating. In fact, I've named my computer Weak Sauce kind of as like a joke. You know, it's good enough for me, but it's nothing compared to some of the rigs I've seen you guys build. It's just a little i5 4596K at 3.5 gigs, 32 gig RAM, 850 watt power supply, EVGA GTX 1070, and the fast internet. I don't know, the gigabyte internet over Ethernet cable directly. So yeah, not anything to be wowed about, but it is strong enough to fly the HJet with synthetic vision on for me. But for some of you that may not be the case, so there's something else that you can turn off to kind of help free up some performance. I've seen some people ask about terrain mode. Like, is there a terrain mode that you can display over here on the MFD? And absolutely there is. It's right up here. So you have 3 different terrain modes here. You have off, you have absolute, which is probably the terrain mode most of us are used to, and then you have what is called relative, which is, to me, the best terrain mode of all of them. And the reason why I like relative is because relative is basically like having terrain mode off unless you're close to terrain that the system is like you may need to know about. So if you're flying in a mountainous region, it might be black on the ground, but as soon as you take off, it turns red, and then it turns yellow and green, and basically red, yellow, green being, okay, that's terrain that you don't need to really be worried about. Yellow's like, okay, cautious, you're getting close, and red being like, okay, dude, are you about to land, or are we about to, and basically it's just like your TAWS warnings, your terrain avoidance warnings. It doesn't come on unless it needs to. So it'll look like this when there's no terrain to be worried about, or it'll light up and show you where all the terrain is around you based on your altitude when it needs to be. So that's where I like to do. I like to keep mine in relative mode. You can control next red, obviously. Here we'll talk about the radar here in a minute. But yeah, there's your terrain right there. So this next part is going to be for people who are completely new to the G3000. I know a lot of you guys are going to these awesome tutorials and PDFs and everything that's been printed out showing you how to create a flight plan. And for most of us, this part is kind of counterintuitive. We've done it so many times because we fly these aircraft, but I understand that there are people that are still looking at this and they're like, what in the world is going on? Especially if you're used to flying the Boeing FMSs or the Airbus FMSs. You come here and you're like, there's not a button anywhere. I think what I'm about to show you is probably going to make this one of your favorite FMSs. So the first thing, I use SimBrief when I do any flight plan creation. I know some people use Little Nav Map, some people use other programs, some people just use the world map. I use SimBrief, create the flight plan, then I load it into a file where I can then access it from the world map. But I found that when pulling it over through the world map, sometimes if you don't do due diligence and check over everything, there might be something that gets lost in translation. So I've had times where I've had a SimBrief flight plan brought over into the world map, and I had double waypoints, and I didn't realize that until I'm flying, and I'm like, why am I trying to circle? Oh, great. So what I have found that if I do that, if I'm loading the flight plan into the world map, I always come here, I go to flight plan options, and I delete the flight plan. I don't even go through and check it, I just delete it. Why? Because I know that I'm about to input it myself, and I'm less likely of inputting an error. And frankly, I just like inputting flight plans anyway. So, let's see here. You would think I would be prepared for the route that I just had loaded. Give me a second here. While I'm pulling this up, I'm going to show you the way that you're probably used to loading your flight plan, and then I'm gonna show you the new way that I'm pretty much guarantee you after I show you this is probably gonna be the only way you're gonna load your flight plans from here on out. Okay, where are you at? It is one of the things I like about there it is. One of the things I like about the SimBrief flight planner is it keeps all of your flight plans that you create. If you're like me and you fly a lot, that also means it takes you a lot longer to find older flight plans, such as the one that we're flying here. But that's okay because I found it. Waiting for it to load here. Okay, here we go. I actually hate this flight plan because it doesn't incorporate does not have an airway. That's okay. We'll just do it as is. Okay, so this particular flight plan, I was going to be flying back to Cobb McCollum Airport right outside of Atlanta. So the way you would usually do it is you'd come here, you'd put, okay, I'm going from New Orleans to my destination of KRYY. Then you will go here to add en route. Be like, what's my first waypoint? Okay, GCV is my first waypoint. Then you hit enter. Be like, which one do I want? I want this guy. Boom. And then you're like, all right, there's my first waypoint. Again, you have to make sure that this waypoint is not the same waypoint as your ending of your departure, because if you have it loaded twice, it will cause you issues. So load your departure to whatever your transition point is. That will automatically load. You don't need to put GCV here again if that GCV is also up here. So just something to remember. But then from this point, you guys will probably have learned, you click this guy, right? And you can either say, okay, I want to insert another waypoint. At this point, you would insert another waypoint, or you could say, I want to put a airway in, and you could put different airways in. They'll then ask you, okay, if you put the airway in, what exit do you want? Da-da-da. Well, this particular flight plan, I don't have any airways. So I would say insert after. The next waypoint would be Montgomery. Then you hit enter. Then you go to Montgomery. Then you say insert after. So forth and so on, right? So then after that, you go do your procedure, arrival, approach, blah, blah, blah. That's not how I like to do it. So let's delete this flight plan and let's show you how I like to do it. So just like you, I'll put in my departure, and I'll put in my arrival, and I'll go to add en route just like you, and I'll put in my first waypoint. But instead of hitting enter, I'll put in my next waypoint too. And how I'm able to do that is right up here, this asterisk route button. You hit that. Well, it's going to ask you which GCV do you want, okay? You hit that button, it gives you an asterisk. From this point here, you can put one of two things. You can put your next waypoint, which for me is Montgomery, MGM. Hit it again, it'll take your next waypoint, which is for me, LaGrange. But the nice thing about this is not only can you put your next waypoint, but you can also put an airway. So let me just give you an example. I can't do it with this one because this particular flight plan I didn't have, but I know one off the top of my head that does have one. So let's just say we were at I think it was let's see, I think it's Birmingham. Let's say we're at Birmingham. System's gonna be like, you're not at Birmingham, you're in New Orleans. System doesn't care. And let's say we're flying to New Orleans, right? You go to add en route, say, okay, my first waypoint is Montgomery. From there, I want to jump on an airway, so I want to jump on the J37 airway, right? You hit that, it'll think, it'll be like, J37, okay. I see that you entered an airway J37. What exit do you want to use for J37? Well, I would like to use SJI. You put that in, it automatically populates the entire route of that airway on the load page, or excuse me, on the airway page. It's the exact same airway page that if you went to the other flight plan and you hit the waypoint and then you said add airway or load airway, this is the exact same page that comes up. But the difference is I didn't have to go back out in order to do that. Instead, I just put J37, asterisk route, SJI. It populated the entire route between the entry and the exit. I'll load airway, and there you go. From there, I'll then go to the procedure that I'm planning to use. Let's say the slid 2 arrival from SJI, load it, call it a day. Right? So obviously this is not the route I'm taking today because I'm already in New Orleans. But that's just, an example of how you could load a flight plan using airways and actual waypoints. So I'll delete it one more time here, and we'll actually go back and put in the actual route that I'm going to be flying today, even though I'm not flying anywhere. KMSY, enter 2 KRYY, enter. So first waypoint was GCV. Next waypoint was MGM. Next waypoint was LGC. I'll enter that. Procedure, arrival, we'll do Diffie 4 because that already comes from LGC. We'll load that. And now, once you got everything loaded, everything should be done, right? Wrong. Always check your math. You have to forgive me, I'm an engineer. I've heard that term so many times I can't even begin to tell you. Well, instead of saying always check your math, I'll tell you always check your map. Show on map. Scroll up here, make sure your route doesn't have any wayward waypoints anywhere. Make sure you're actually going where you say you're supposed to be going. If you have a SimBrief flight plan, make sure this route looks like what's in SimBrief, or if you have a little nav map, make sure that route looks like what you have in little nav map. You can then go back here, select a waypoint, and you can actually scroll through each particular point in your plan using the up or down arrow here. So just one of those things that I liked. Oh yeah, by the way, I don't know if many of you know, but there is a safe taxi type feature that is included with the G3000 here in the HJet and pretty much all of the G3000, G5000 aircraft. This isn't a true safe taxi depiction because a true safe taxi will actually give you the runway nomenclatures and the taxiway labels and all that stuff. But it's good enough for if you need to just figure out where you're at the airport and where you're going. If you do need, obviously the description, the names of the taxiways and all that stuff, then obviously you have to use charts and stuff like that. So I'm digressing. I just saw that pop up and I just wanted to show you guys. I don't know if you know that you can do that or not. You just scroll all the way down. You know, go as close into your range as you can go, and it will do that. So anyway, that's your flight plan. I highly suggest, especially if you have a long flight, you do it that way. It's just so much faster. It's a lot easier. You don't have to keep going back and forth, you know, this waypoint, then enter, you know, after that, put the next waypoint and load this airway, and you know, you can just load it all on the same page. Now, I just talked about how you could kind of scroll through here. That kind of leads into the next thing that I wanted to show you guys, which to me is one of the coolest features of the G3000. So we all know how awesome charts are, right? Like, I mean, just the fact that we can use charts is pretty cool. You can use your range knob selector here to zoom in, and you know, it's a nice feature, right? The problem with that, well, it could be if you're not really familiar with using the charts on the aircraft, is what if you want to see this point way over here, but when you zoom, you can't see it. This isn't a touchscreen. You can't just grab it and move it. How will we be able to go over there? Well, you could obviously fly the route, and as you get closer over there, you can see that stuff, but that won't help you if you need to see something now, right? Let's say there's a VNAV constraint somewhere in here that you want to put into your flight plan, but you can't see what it is. But one of my favorite features of the G3000 specifically, which I don't even know if this is modeled in the G1000, to be honest with you. It may be. But anyway, it's the mouse feature. So the mouse feature, if you sit right here on the top of the right knob on the left GTC, press that, you'll get this grid. And this grid will allow you to move your chart around. All you gotta do is click in the area, click and hold, and all of a sudden you can move your chart around. So if I need to see what is this way out there, I'll zoom in, right? Then I can move my chart. Oh, that's SJI. If I need to see anything along this route, now I have a way of moving it, and I can see it just like that. Furthermore, you have this chart options button up here. You can come in here and you can change things like, oh, I don't want it displayed in day, I'd rather have it display in night. Once again, you come, you can still move your chart around. I always like this depiction. I think it looks really cool. It's just for me, I can see it better when it's in daylight mode. As you can see, there's also an auto, and it'll automatically, when it becomes nighttime, it'll switch this over for you. I always keep mine in day, but some people might prefer to have it at night. You got plan modes. That's just changing, I think, the formatting. Yeah, I think that's just changing formatting. I just keep that in all. Threshold, I don't remember what that was. Maybe that's for, oh, okay, yes, just backlight. So at nighttime, this is actually really nice because this can be kind of bright, especially if you have all your lights down while you're flying at night. You can come in here and you can actually turn that down. So this is one of my favorite features of the G3000, but it's not just for charts. That's what makes it so awesome. You can also use it for your maps. It'll give you a mouse. So what will this mouse do? Can I go and can I click on airports with it? No, that would be pretty cool if you could. I think in the real G3000 you can do that. But what it does do is, let's say my route is going up here to, I think this is Baton Rouge, and I want to see what's this storm doing up there. If I zoom in, it's only going to zoom into where my aircraft's at. I can't see what Baton Rouge is getting way up there, right? Well, if I take my mouse and I scroll to the edge that I want it to go, I can now control where I want this map to go simply by going to the edge of the direction that I want the map to scroll in. All of a sudden you can see now I can zoom in, and take a closer peek at Baton Rouge. And when I'm done, I just hit the back button and it will snap back to my original aircraft position. Again, like I said, I really like using this feature. It is it's one of those features that you see some of the guys on YouTube when they're flying their aircraft using, especially when they're scanning around, looking at their next rad data. You'll see them moving around. I just think that's pretty dope. So yeah, that's your mouse function. Now, I already mentioned decluttering this map to kind of help clear up some performance. One of the other things I like to do is filter what things I am showing in this map. So I personally like to have my route, my waypoints, or excuse me, my route that I'm going to be flying. I want the weather radar information, or this is the next rad information. So just real quick, the difference between this information and your actual weather radar is this is supposed to be simulated satellite weather. Okay, so we'll get into that here in a minute. And I want airports displayed, but I don't want every single airport that is in this area displayed. So the first thing that I will do is I will come down here to utilities. I'll go to setup, avionics settings, and right here you have nearest airport runway surface, nearest airport minimum runway length. Well, the HJet isn't a off-field aircraft. I think we have to land on concrete last time I checked, or asphalt. Now, I have personally put the airplane down on a 3,600 foot runway. I would not want to do that in an emergency situation. So for me, my nearest airports, I want only airports that have runways that are 5,000 feet or longer. Now, you may be comfortable putting it down on something smaller than that in the case of emergency. If that's the case, go ahead and put your number in. You just click on it, put the number you want, and go from there. Now, what's nice about this is now when you go to your nearest airport list, when you're flying around, the only airports that will be populated will be airports that have runways that are 5,000 feet or longer. And this is a pretty sweet feature too. If you're at any point, you're flying around at any point, and let's say, oh, I need to go to the next nearest airport, and CAPS is the next nearest airport. You can just click on that. You can say show on map what direction that airport's in. It'll tell you, it'll give you the bearing line direction direct to that airport. Not only that, you can actually hit the direct to button and it'll automatically turn you direct to the airport. I love that feature. Haven't used it yet. I haven't really simulated emergencies or needing to divert for weather or anything, but it's just nice knowing that that's there. Turn that off. Oops. The other thing that the nearest airport list gives you, though, is some important symbology here. The symbology is basically dictating the size of the airport. So if you have a pink one here, like what we're seeing, this is a larger airport. The blue ones are medium-sized airports, and then you'll also see I think pink ones that are like pink, but they have holes in the middle. Those are considered your smaller airports. Now, I have seen some airports that I consider to be large airports depicted differently, but mainly I'll put it to you this way. For me, I'm looking for pink and blue solid airports. Not saying that there aren't smaller airports with runways that have 5,000 feet lengths or longer. I just prefer the bigger ones. Now, the reason why that's important is because if you go back to map settings in aviation, airport settings, you can actually decide which airports you want to see the majority of. Now, I haven't really looked into why it works the way it works. And I'm pretty sure if I really thought about it hard enough, it would make sense. But here's the easiest thing to remember. Whichever airports you want to see the most of, put the biggest number in. Okay? The airports that you want to see the least amount of, put the smallest number in. That's basically the easiest way I can remember that. Okay, so I want to see mainly medium and large airports. I'm gonna have the bigger numbers in there. I don't really care about the small airports. If I raise this number, this map is gonna light up like a Christmas tree. I mean, every private field, every small regional this, that. I mean, there's so many small airports in this country, and I don't care about that. So I will keep small airports nice and low, and the large and medium ones, relatively high. Not at their highest, but relatively. You might decide you want everything displayed, or you want only large airports displayed. If that's the case, then you lower medium airports to as low as small airports too. What I can say is the lower you go, the least amount of those airports that show up. And you can go all the way down to 250 feet here on small airports. I don't know what that... I don't... I'm pretty sure if I thought about it long enough, I could probably figure out why they do it that way. But the easiest way to remember is the airports you want the most of, put the biggest number in. The airports you want the least of, put the lower number. Just one more thing that'll help keep the map clean. We don't want to have all this extra stuff up there. Ooh, this weather is looking really great. This is gonna be awesome for the second portion here that we're about to speak about. Yeah, in fact, I think we are ready for that portion now. So the last two things I'm gonna cover in this video, I'm gonna need to get up in the sky. So I'm gonna stop right now. I'll be right back once I get up to altitude, and we will discuss the last two features. Obviously, one of them is going to be weather radar. Okay, I will see you guys in a bit. Okay, so I just paused the sim here. I just took off out of New Orleans. I just wanted to stop here and see if I could capture what I wanted to get. Live weather is so finicky in the sim. You have a thunderstorm there 1 minute and then it'll be gone the next minute. So I'm going to just pause us at this point and talk about the next thing I wanted to cover. Real quick, I wanted to show you guys what I was talking about as far as the relative terrain. If you scroll out here, so you see how everything's green. Now you can see some yellows and reds. It's actually the Rocky Mountains over here, the Appalachian Mountains over there. That's what I was talking about as far as what the relative terrain function will do. As we climb higher, I'm only at 2,000 feet. As we climb higher, all of this will eventually fade to black. And you'll notice as soon as you take off, pretty much as soon as the main wheels leave the ground, everything will be red. And as you climb, it'll then turn yellow, and then it'll turn green, and finally it'll start fading to black. So it could be kind of distracting, I see, during landing portions, so I don't know if I'm going to leave it on during that time. But at least for takeoff, especially if I'm going to be climbing out of somewhere where mountains around me and everything, I'll probably have it on. Okay, but what I wanted to discuss in this portion of our video is weather radar. So as I mentioned, the weather that you're seeing on this radar right here, this is coming from satellite data. NEXRAD is satellite data. In reality, there's usually kind of a delay between what you see here and where your actual weather is. In sim, you're not going to get that delay. It'd be kind of cool if that was modeled, but beggars can't be choosers. I think the delay is only like 2 or 3 minutes usually between what you see here and where the weather is at its current point. It also depends on where you're flying too, because I guess you can't get NEXRAD coverage everywhere. The real pilots could chime in on that one. So the important thing to remember is this technically isn't weather radar, or isn't weather data coming from your weather radar on the aircraft. That comes from this radar. Now, I've had a lot of people say, hey, when I go and I hit that button, there's nothing displayed. Well, that's probably because you didn't turn it on. And it's really easy to turn on. Once you hit the button, you'll get the scan, the depiction, I don't know. You may not have anything showing. Hit the button again, you'll get another weather radar button. Click that button, and then most likely you'll find this. You'll be in standby mode. This is your weather radar control settings here. First thing you're going to want to do is turn on your radar. Now, when you turn it on, you'll be like, wait a minute, it's still not displaying. Well, you got to tell it to display the weather. Once you do that, then you'll have your depiction. At that point, you can use the inner knob here and change your ranges and, just like any other weather radar that you may have used. And you can take the bearing line off. That'll help you if you need to navigate around things, it's telling you, okay, this is the exact direction you're going at this point. Now, because I'm in a turn, you can kind of see it's kind of in a wedge shape because I'm still turning. But anyway, usually that's what that's trying to show you. But one of my favorite features that this weather radar offers you is something that we don't get with the working title CJ4. There's a weather radar in that aircraft, but it's very rudimentary. We can't change the tilt function, and I think that's one of the biggest complaints some of the developers have had as far as getting the SDK access from Asobo. In these aircraft, the G1000, the G3000, G5000 aircraft, you don't really need it. And the reason why you don't need it is because these radars come with a vertical scan function. This display right here is one of my favorite displays. This display right here, honestly, is why I put so many hours in the TBM when we first got it. Because this gives you the ability to see not only the storms that are in front of you, but you can see at what altitude those storms are compared to you, how thick or how high the storms are. You can't beat that. It's one thing having, okay, I see there's storms in front of me. But if I'm at 30,000 feet, how do I know if that storm's below me or not? If it's not, I'm going to have to go around it, right? But if I put on a vertical scan mode, Now I know, okay, well, you're always going to be where the two lines meet, right? This weather's clearly above me. Sometimes you'll see the weather way down here. That's clearly well below you, even though it's lit up bright red and pink and all that nasty stuff, it's below you. You can fly right over it. Okay, now these 60,000 feet, minus 60,000 feet, that's just part of the bore side of the actual, the way the RF leaves the antenna. It's basically saying at 20 miles out, we can detect things. This is your center line, up to 60,000 feet above us and below 60,000 feet below us. Now, of course, this airplane can't fly 60,000 feet. So at whatever altitude the ground is out, that RF is going to bounce back at the antenna and it'll just be red as clutter. That's usually when you're on the horizontal display and you see that the yellow clutter lines all the way around here at the edge. That's the ground clutter. You don't have to really worry about that. It's just, some information for you. But that's what those are showing you. The closer you can bring this weather in, that number goes down, obviously. Obviously it's not going to be as high at this point as it is at this point. But at the same time, the closer you bring it in, the closer you can see just how big the weather in front of you is. Basically, how high you need to get or how low you need to go below it. Love, love, love this display. So, again, turn on your weather radar. You just hit the weather radar button, hit the next weather radar button, go from standby to on, display, weather, and then you just choose whichever one you want, vertical or horizontal. I mean, I do not fly aircraft that don't have weather radars. I have to have them. It's one of those sim things that I want, and I know a lot of people have complaints about the in-game weather and the weather radars that come with it, but I have found these to be quite reliable. I can get around major weather without them, so I'm happy with that. I know without having SDK access, it's a lot harder to get your weather radar to do that. So I'm guessing there's going to be an update here soon that you'll start seeing weather radar, and I guess maybe the PMDG didn't have weather radar or something. I don't know. I haven't been keeping up, but we have it in the HJet, and that makes me happy. Another thing that we have in the HJet is probably the thing I've received the most questions about, and that is this. Your range, see, I'm just having a hard time. Your range rings, okay? Your range rings. This is going to be a reference of how far you can fly at your current power settings, at the current altitude, and the current conditions that you're in. That's the easiest way to remember that. You get to that, you go to map settings, other tab, and it's going to be this guy right here. The range to altitude, that's going to be the infamous blue banana. I don't know if you can see it. It's right here on my aircraft, and that's basically the altitude where you're supposed to be leveling off. So I'm climbing to 6,000 feet. So from 2,000 feet to 6,000 feet, this is where I'll level off at 6,000 feet. Okay. But your range rings is how far you can go based on your power settings and the fuel that you have, along with the reserves that you set. So when you have your fuel range set at 30 minutes, it's saying this is the range that you have without reserves, and you put another 30 minutes on there, this is the range you have with the 30 minutes. Now, let's say you want an hour reserve. Now you get a yellow line. This yellow line's telling you, sir or ma'am, you don't have that kind of fuel performance right now. You're not going to be able to do it. You're going to need to drop that down. So if you go 45 minutes, okay, now I can work with you. If you want 45 minutes of reserve, this is as far as you could go with just the regular fuel without reserves, and this is as far as you can go with your 45-minute reserves. Now, obviously, as we climb higher, get into thinner air, these are going to expand out exponentially. At least to the aircraft's maximum range, or maximum range for the conditions that we're flying in. And it gives you a good indication from your current location to what locations you can fly to. So if you're doing your delivery flights across the Atlantic, this is a lifesaver, because you can sit there and watch, okay, is the airport that I'm going to, or the alternates that I have, are they within that ring? If they're not, oh boy, you better pull some power back. You better go to long range cruise or something, right? So that's your range rings. They're real easy. Like I said, as you climb up higher, you'll see this adjust, and yeah, it's just one of those other features that help you out, Now, something I wanted to talk about that I wasn't planning on talking about, but as I'm looking at it, I can see it up here. You can actually control what is being displayed up here. So for me, not only do I like having range ring, but I also like having my endurance up here. You can also have your ETAs to your next waypoint. You can have your ETAs to your actual destination. You can throw all that up there. If you want to display that, you just go to Utilities, Setup, Avionics, and then you go to MFD fields. And you can just scroll through these. There's my endurance, and you can set whatever you want that particular field to display. Fuel at destination, your ground speed, landing, anything that you want, you can put it right there. So, like I said, I like to be able to see endurance in the actual minutes, so I can compare times when I'm looking at the flight plan. But, if you want something else up there, you can put it up there. So I think that pretty much covers the features that I wanted to highlight today. If you have any questions, like I said, I'm Blue Porpoise on the HJet Discord. If you're seeing this on YouTube for the first time and you're flying the HJet and you don't know about the Discord, go over to Discord, look for FlightFx. I'll put a link down in the description. Join the Discord. There's a lot of helpful people over there. If you're already in the Discord, like I said, and you have any questions about the videos or further questions, or you need me to explain something, you guys know I'm here to help however I can.